Okay, good morning. Yeah, my name is Karl-Pekka Laakso and I'm from Reaktor. And this is what I say about myself. I'm a pragmatic guy. Means that I value more stuff that allows you to do something than theory. And about Reaktor, about 250 people, about 200 developers, about 40 designers, and then the rest. We're fun to work with, and we're passionate about doing good software. Let's go to business. So I'm going to spoil the most greatest thing for today on the first slide, and it's the red post-it notes on the left side. But I guess that I have to tell you some things before you understand their value. So to give some other things about some other overview about what we're going to discuss about today, we're going to talk about 4 days, and then we are going to talk about creating a ripple in the pool. But let's start with the case. This is going to make sense. Don't worry. So I decided that I'm going to try to tell you in at least somewhat detail what we did, and to understand what we did and why and what went wrong and what went right, I have to fill in some kind of basic background info of what was this project about. So first, we did it for Barona. And as you can see, Barona is kind of an intermediator between workers and jobs. I mean, they've got other companies that have these jobs that people could do, and then they've got job applicants, and they do the best match. And the different fields that they have construction work, they have logistics, healthcare, office, industry, all kinds of things. And what they have to, they have to do the best match. And for that, they have software. And the existing software, when the project started, wasn't very optimal. It was pretty many years old, but the main problem is not the age. It is that it was difficult to find the best workers for the jobs because the software wasn't that good for doing this thing. So what we tried to do is, we're trying to help the people at Barona to do their job better, but we have to start from some of these sectors. I mean, we can't just, it would be foolish to kind of serve all the different types of jobs at the same time, because it just happens that if you're giving workers for some kind of a sector, it doesn't work in the same way as in the other one. So we had initially the idea, or actually the idea was given to us, that we should start from construction, because construction work has certain properties that other things don't have. I mean, I don't know if you have any kind of idea why would someone want to lease a construction worker from Barona, but I'll try to give you one or two. First of all, at the construction site, when they're building the house, not perhaps as big as this, but anyway, they get this in the morning, or they know a couple of days beforehand that they're going to get 40 fridges delivered. And those 40 fridges are going to stand outside in the cold until someone carries them inside. Now, for that, you need someone who is capable of lifting the fridge, carrying it inside without breaking the doors or without breaking the fridge, and willing to do this. So the other construction workers are guys that can do fine things at the building site, but you need this kind of people as well. And you don't perhaps have them available at all times because you don't have this kind of case that you're going to get this load of stuff at your yard and then carry them inside. So this is one case where you need workers. And the other case is that you need a skilled worker of some kind that you don't have. Like you have to dig a ditch, which is very close to an existing house. And for that thing, you need someone who can actually drive this digger with such skill that he doesn't make any kind of mistake, like turning the digger the wrong way around. Because if he do that, he would actually the digger is so strong that he would actually break the wall of the nearby house. So there are different kind of needs. Sometimes you need rather kind of two pair of hands, and sometimes you need a skilled worker that has a very special skill. And the point is, the gigs, the job, when they come to the work for the site, they aren't that long. It can be that they are, say, 4 days or 2 weeks, or sometimes there's even months or years. But compared to the other fields working, for example, for office work, I mean, I suppose that many of you know rather a lot about IT consulting or IT projects, and I don't think that almost any of you would consider hiring someone to do any kind of reasonable work for 4 days. I mean, it takes 4 days to kind of accustomize to the environment and so on, but it's totally possible in construction. So the idea was that we'll start from construction, we'll go there and see what their problem is. And the problem, what we found out, had a lot to do with exactly this fact that they have short gigs. See, they have to do a lot of these contracts between Barona and the worker and the customer. Contracts that define that who's going to be the worker and what the salary is going to be, what the customer is going to pay, what the other expenses are, and then what are the kind of the general conditions, which is in Finnish called this. I won't go in detail, but it's rather important to know what that is, because, well, has to do with the working union stuff. So, they had to do a huge amount of these. And here we have a consultant at Barona who's currently in the middle. Sorry, the details have been removed to protect the innocent, but he's currently in the phone and he's writing down who's going to go to which site at what price and so on. And as you can notice, he isn't using an IT system over here. He's writing it with pen on paper. And do you have any kind of idea why? Well, I don't think you can, but I think you could guess. Because the system with which he would have done the same thing, the form which kind of describes the contract, has 200 fields. I'm not kidding you. If you print it out, it's this long. It's about 1.5 meters, and it really has 200 fields and components, because all of the things that you can kind of change in this kind of a contract, there simply are so many of them. So, but we knew, because we watched what they do, we knew that with the 6 pieces of information that are exactly these 6, you can do the contract. And the other ones you just pick from the template. So we had to do something that, well, this was our initial idea. We had to do something that enables these people to do these contracts so that they don't have to touch or handle these 200 fields. So that was our initial idea. And now, I don't know if you're, by the way, who's any familiar with Kanban? Okay, good. So, who knows what this is? Okay, good. This is minimal viable product. And our idea that what we should do first was to kind of replace the 200 fields with some kind of a system. That was simply the idea. And now, how to define the minimal stuff to do this? Because you have to start from something. We're launching a software from zero, and you have to have the first version. And this is the kind of the first version. And there are two ways, at least, to do this wrong. First is this one, so that you have a minimal product, but it doesn't do anything useful. This isn't so dangerous because you can do more. You can launch this. Well, no one uses it because it does anything useful, but at least it isn't expensive. And the other way of doing wrong is this one. So you do the product and you do kind of too much of it. So it's no more minimal, and now you could have wasted someone's money. So defining what is actually the minimal set with which you are going to launch it is going to be rather difficult. I'm not sure if we made any good job about that, but we had this idea. The MVP was called in Finnish miehet työmaalle, which means guys to the construction site. And we had a user interface with which you could find some kind of a worker, add the worker to a basket, and find the construction site and empty the basket. It would have several workers in it, and fill those 6 necessary pieces of information. Very strictly restricted to certain limitations, like there weren't. You could only do this for the most typical cases. You couldn't do this for any kind of difficult construction sites where they'd have customer-specific prices or customer-specific prices for certain job titles which are linked and so on. Just have kind of the most basic construction site which had the most generic prices, the most common worker union contract type, and so on. And then we could do this. And now, how does this work? This is just basic. Until this point, this is just kind of basic Kanban plus MVP. But now let's get to the interesting stuff. How is this linked to the user interface design or service design? And here we have the wall. This was at the first stage when we had no red post-it notes. So what is going on is on the left-hand side there we have the green post-it note that says what we are doing in the kind of what is the big thing that we're doing. And then that big thing is divided into all these other big green things. I think it's more easy to show me with this next one. This is the kind of basic structuring that you have. Big thing on the top. Then on the there's only one, since this is Kanban, there's only one big thing in progress at the time. It is under development, and it is divided into smaller tasks, which some of them are already reviewed, some of the big ones are already done. So the basic idea is how the flow goes is that you pick the big thing on the top, move it to this, split it to smaller pieces. The development guys do those small pieces one at a time, and when they're all finished, the big one is finished, you move it to review, and then you put it to done. And at some later point, it's going to be split that you have stuff in production. So how does how do we link user interface design or service design with this? Well, it just turned out that I'm going to skip a bit of my slides. In the beginning of the project, when you have no kind of MVP, you have no kind of idea what you're going to do, you have this big hassle. And at that point, what we did is we went to see the users, We try to understand what the heck is going on at construction sites and so on. And you just can't do any kind of reasonable software because no one knows what is actually needed. And the point of the hassle is to come out with some kind of a long-term goal or some kind of a point from which you can kind of strip down the MVP with which you could go out. So the hassle ends when you have some kind of an idea that, okay, at this point, we know that at least this kind of a software would help someone, and then you start the development. And now let's go back to this one. So what is going on here is that the system works in such a way that this upper lane is mostly development. And how service design or user interface design tries to support that is that the things, if there's any kind of problem with a user interface or whatever that needs the help of the service designers that is linked to the thing that are currently under, well, the people are doing, that is the priority one thing. You have to address it immediately. If there's any kind of unclear things on the post-it that is first on the top underneath next, that is the place, or that is the thing that you have to address next, or that is the second in priority for the user interface designer or the service designer. And if those things are all okay, then what you can do, and what you should do, is try to do the kind of classic user interface design or service design for features that are going to perhaps be taken into the development. And what I mean by this is that these things, well, I'm going to show you what this means in practice, because the idea, I have great difficulties in figuring out if I'm making any sense to you. The point is that you have a balance between, you have to design the user interface so that it aims to something that maybe not be developed. And those things that are already on the development lane, these are definitely going to be developed. But the idea is that here, underneath, you do things, you kind of find out that what could be something that could be developed, and then there's going to be some really heavy discussion of about what is the value of those designs before they are going to enter this zone. And to give you some kind of idea is that if we take this MVP, here we have the actual tasks, the actual green stuff that was in the first MVP, which is about halfway through. I wonder if I can show any cursor over here. Seems I can. Okay. What was done there, the user interface design, note that these were completed in November. The user interface design for those things was already completed somewhere in August. And at that point in November, we were doing totally different stuff in the kind of the lower lane. We were doing stuff that was perhaps implemented in February or January or something like that. So there's kind of a big balance between doing things beforehand and then putting things actually with implementing them. And this now this list starts to make more sense after the MVP is put into production. And this is what I mean about you start making ripples in the pool. Because once you put the MVP into production, what happens then is that you have been visiting the users and you know what they do and they have certain problems. But now, once you put the software into production, the problems that they previously had are not going to be the same anymore, because now you gave them the software that solved the most crucial problems for them. So the rest of the problems they had are going to be different. And this is an extremely important point, because once you start doing this, you are actually entering the zone of software development which I would consider normal. Anything before the MVP has some kind of strange features, like I put the 0 before the MVP because you have created software, but you don't know that it works. You have never put it into production. But after you put it into production, you can actually do things. You can kind of try to understand what the users do with it. You can measure it. You can follow them. You can take feedback, for example. And it turns out that feedback is another thing that you have to take into account in the how you're gonna kind of prioritize your service design work, because about in the halfway there's the MVP, but the next stuff that is after it. No, this is the first thing that was done, and that is last. The next thing, the couple of few next things that were done after the MVP are not those that were designed in August. Those were the things that we received immediately feedback that this is not working. So what we had to do is now, since we just launched software and got user feedback, we design things straight on the fly so that they are implemented during the next couple of work days, because the thing that we launched has serious problems. And note that those problems are totally different. We had user interface designs to cover for, I'd say, about at least half a year of development. But those were not the most important things. And how did we know? Well, because we started the loop of learning and we got the feedback from the users, and now we know that what is missing from this piece of software is something different than we designed. So we have to kind of do design for new things. And notice one other thing. The numbers here, I never explained what they are. So you got, say, I don't know if you can see these, but you got 10 over here, then 12, 2, 6, 4, and so. Those are work days from the beginning when someone took this first from next to the in progress until it was moved into production. Those are work days for that one. And now if you look at these numbers, they are surprisingly small. I'd say they're something after the project had been going on for a while. Most typical numbers are 1, 2, and 3. There are some 4s, 1, 5, and 1, 8 there in between, 1, 6 as well. What this means is that once we have launched this loop of learning and we know how to do this thing, if we get feedback from the users that something is wrong, we can react really fast. Because those workday numbers mean that those are the number of workdays between releases in production. So that if for example, users give a comment that I would love to do my work with this, but I cannot because my customers have such kind of prices that you need a kind of a special type of this, a special kind of user interface to handle the prices, because they are actually, the price is not defined as a free number, but is some kind of a factor for the salary that you pay to the worker, well, you know what? We can do that in about 4 days. Because it means that we have to go to the field, we have to understand what they do, but since that is not often so very difficult, we do the design very fast, we put it into the one of these post-it notes, and if that was the most important thing that they need, there's going to be production in about 4 or 5 days. And I don't know what that means to you. I've been in all kinds of software projects, and I mean that, okay, you can fix a bug into production in about a couple of hours. That's nothing new. But with bugs, the point is, it's an anomaly. I mean, you know how the system should work, but it doesn't work that way. So, fixing bugs several times a day and putting stuff into production, new versions, that's nothing new. But if you have a new feature that does something that no one knew anything about 4 days before this launch day, I think that is somewhat remarkable. So you can do things very fast. And else, so what my view of the product is that it's consisted of those post-it notes, because every post-it note describes a feature. So kind of the product is a big lump of post-it notes. There's one post-it note at a time in development. There are several post-it notes or features that could be done in the because they have the user interface design ready. Some of them are a bit hazy because we haven't got the feedback of the previous things we had in production from the users, so we don't know whether this is going to turn out well or is it going to be good or bad. So those things are something that we have the design ready, but we'd like to know something more. We don't know whether those are actually essential. And then there are the red post-it notes. The user interface designs, even the hazy ones, are things that you can talk about because they're drawn. You can show them to someone, you can simulate them, and you show that this would be how the software would work if we would just have it implemented. But it's not yet, it's on paper and so on. But the red post-it notes, they are stuff that the customer has said, I've got this great idea. Now, could we have an integration to the Reaktor by Net system? And the traditional way in, for example, Scrum project is let's put it in the backlog. And I don't know what that means to you, but to me it means something like between forget it or okay, nice idea, and let's kind of forget it. But in this way, the ingenious idea, and this was not mine, so I can really call it ingenious, is write it on a red post-it note and put it there beside the stuff that we are going to do. Because now, when the customer comes, when another representative of the customer comes out, I got the splendid idea that we could do this integration with the Reaktor by Net system, and then you can just show, oh yeah, good. Someone else talked about this as well. Now, by the way, do you think that this is more important than the stuff that we currently have in these green notes? Because these are the things that we are currently doing first, if nothing else happens. And then they look at them and start thinking, no, I think we really should do these things first. Okay, but it's on the wall. So to the customer, it means that it wasn't forgotten. We've taken him or her seriously, but it's not kind of, this is still, there's no user interface design for it. There's all this kind of research, you have to do it, but it's still there, and you can discuss about it. It's kind of from the customer's point of view, this thing has been taken in by the team. Okay, I'm almost done here. I noticed at some point earlier this week that in one respect, this is perhaps the most horrible software to describe to anyone or to show demos of, because it has nothing else but sensitive information. So it was rather difficult to find a screenshot which would be taken from the system. This is taken with example demo data, so there are no actual real names of people, their real addresses, their real salaries, their real stuff that the customer is going to pay for them. But it looks something like this. So I just want to show that this stuff really exists. Sorry, all the other screenshots have real names, real phone numbers, and so on. My mistake. But to kind of recap, now you know what the red post-it notes are. I still think they're ingenious. Now you know what the 4 days means. And from my point of view, all of this is dependent on one thing. You have to put the software into production. You have to start making the ripples in the pond to get the real user feedback when they try to do their real work with your piece of software. Otherwise, it's just, well, kind of hard to do the right things. I hope this made some sense. Thank you.